Hey, everyone. Thanks for returning to the Awaken Alive podcast. On the show today, we have the great Steve Maxwell, who joins us from the UK. Steve is a strength and conditioning coach, Brazilian jiu-jitsu practitioner who's been featured just about everywhere. He's been on the Joe Rogan Experience multiple times, London Real on multiple occasions, and most recently on Inside Quest. Steve travels around the world living a nomadic lifestyle, teaching jiu-jitsu and also longevity training to guys. His mission is to help get guys to focus their training, not on PRs and short-term aesthetic goals necessarily, but really focusing on how can I train today so that in my 80s and 90s I can really do something amazing. And in his philosophy and the point of his message is that it really takes a shift in the way we train today. During the show, we get into a little bit of that. We also, Steve also shares with us how he got into jiu-jitsu, his thoughts on the UFC, and just some of the other things he's got going on, including his Maui Jiu-Jitsu for Life camp, which is coming up in April of 2017. We will link to that in the show description, so please check that out if you're interested in attending Steve's training camp. Otherwise, without further ado, here's Mr. Steve Maxwell. Okay, and we're live. So thanks for taking some time out to meet with us, Steve. I know you're an incredibly busy guy.
I
What have
stay pretty busy, on the road, pretty much year round.
Yeah, we just saw you on Inside Quest. How did you get hooked up with those guys?
He had heard of me and just contacted me, and we just set it up. I just happened to be in the area for a connecting flight, so we just laid over for an extra day, and that's how that all happened. Heard me some other place. I'm not sure where.
Yeah, I was gonna say
Fun. I enjoyed it.
this is probably one of the crazier years in your life. It seems like you're everywhere. You've been on London Real twice, Joe Rogan's multiple times, Inside Quest. It seems like you're on every podcast imaginable, almost on a weekly
It,
basis. I don't know how you fit it in.
yeah, I have a lot of downtime. I don't work in a regular 9 to 5 job. I gave
Uh-huh.
that up years ago. My gym and my Brazilian jiu-jitsu school, um, I pretty much wanted to do a lot of the things I like to do. And the way I make my living now, I call it my freedom business. I have online personal training. And what that is for people that don't need to be handheld through a workout. They know they have the incentive to work out. They're motivated to work out. They want someone to tell them what to do. There's just such a huge amount of information and unfortunately misinformation fused. So they want someone to weed through all the nonsense, really come up with a sane, sage workout based on good sound principles and wisdom. And I do that for people. And I do that with nutrition too. Diet can be really, really tough subject. It's almost like religion.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So people sort it out and come up with a sustainable eating program. So that's one way I make my living. And the other way is, of course, the downloadable, as we talked about, things that I like to be doing. And then, of course, the seminars are like icing on the cake. I do that for fun with young people, and I like to get up and speak and work with people one-on-one. So that allows me then a lot of downtime between those things.
Hmm.
My life is my own. My schedule is my own. It wasn't always that way. When I owned a gym in Philadelphia, my jiu-jitsu school, I was basically teaching and working pretty brutal schedule. Unusual, get up around 5:30 in the morning, be at my place of business in the morning and pretty much working all day. And I did that for years and years. And once I decided not to have a brick and mortar structure anymore, out on the road, kind of living the life of a digital nomad, then I had a lot more time to myself.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, it's we talked about this one time. Our other partner, Mark, is also has a fitness marketing business, and a lot of personal trainers he works with want to immediately go into the opening the gym business model, and he tries to tell him that that's a hard life to get into. You're much better off sticking to doing something that you're doing where you have your life. You have more to your life, and you're not going to become a workaholic.
I did enjoy my years in the gym. And before that, I was the manager and fitness director at several other places.
Hey, Steve, we lost you. You still there? Mark, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Steve, I think we lost you.
Been around for a while. And I tell these young guys, it's I understand the dream of owning your own little gym.
Mm-hmm.
It can be quite a wonderful thing, but you're trapped. You're basically trapped. You can't go anywhere. If you do go somewhere, while you're spending money. So you're spending money on your trip or your vacation or your holiday. At the same time, you're losing money because you're not working people out. And invariably, because as soon as people get out of their boom, you won't see them. It was not unusual to come back and have like 2 or 3 people just wouldn't come back maybe for a long time. Maybe they come back later, but so it is a problem. You can't really go anywhere.
Yeah.
And I tell these guys, don't pay rent on your own place. Work out of somebody else's place. Better to rent space from somebody that's already paying the bills. That way, when the roof is leaking and the hot water heater breaks and the toilet is clogged up, you're not back there with the goddamn plunger cleaning up someone's mess.
Sure.
So
that's true.
Better
I found that
work as a private contractor out of someone else's, and think hard and long, putting your own place. Because, it seems to be the dream. I did have that dream at one point. I did live it. As you said, it's tough to leave, tough to do anything.
I totally agree. So I own my own gym, and I kind of have an abnormal arrangement compared to what a lot of other people do. My space is a barn, basically in the back of what is now my parents' property. Before, I just rented it from a guy for very cheap. I don't say the number because it embarrasses a lot of people and hurts their feelings, but he was just a really nice guy, and he wasn't using the space at all. So he threw a really lowball number at me that made my jaw drop, and I said, well, sure, if that's all you're looking for. But now my parents own the place, and so I don't have any overhead. It's just a beautiful old barn against the woods in a natural setting. But go back to what you said, where you're losing people and losing money. I found that it's kind of like a 2-week window if somebody isn't consistent with their workout program, that they just sort of disappear.
That's absolutely true. I found the same exact thing.
Yeah.
It's about 2 weeks.
About 2 weeks.
That's about the limit.
So I was listening to your.
Go
ahead. Okay.
Finish,
so I was listening. Okay. Yeah. No, I thought this was cool. Going back to the jiu-jitsu, that you seem to be a really early American adapter of Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and the guy that I first studied on, Joe Hurst, he was one of the first Americans to train in the Gracie household as well. And it was like, it just was really cool listening to you talk about, being at the very beginning of this movement, which is now, they're like tanning beds. There's a jiu-jitsu school on every corner in America now. But, way back in the 90s when you started, what a cool experience to be at the forefront of that movement. And
it was very exciting.
if you wanted to share some of that, that would be, I think, fascinating, just for me personally to hear about as a jiu-jitsu practitioner, but certainly our listeners as well.
My true love as a youngster was wrestling. I was a small boy. I wasn't particularly talented athletically, but I had a good, quick mind and a tenacity, and also a real mind for pushing myself, but no real talent per se. I wasn't bad, but I wasn't particularly great. I was one of these guys that didn't have a lot of fast twitch muscle fibers, so I couldn't excel at explosive type sports. I wasn't big enough to play football, throw the javelin or the shot put or the discus. Didn't have enough fast twitch to be good at jumping, high jump, pole vault. Poor hand-eye coordination. I didn't even like basketball. Too short, too slow, couldn't jump. But when I found wrestling, it was like, wow, I had the perfect attributes for wrestling, just the right combination, and I had instant success with that particular sport. Man to do with wrestling skills. I had wrestled from the time I was a small boy right up through university. I wrestled Division I program, NCAA. It gives you such a good background for other types of martial arts. I don't think it's any accident that almost every weight class in the UFC is dominated by former NCAA wrestlers.
Agree 100%.
Yeah, but there was no UFC in those days, So what do you do? So I stayed with wrestling. I coached wrestling in high school for a bit. Now, that's a young man's sport. It's, a lot of power, strength, speed. I tried to go to some of the local colleges just to play around with it. Entered a few open wrestling tournaments, but it's hard. Usually the college and high school wrestling practices are right in the middle of a working man's day. And at that point, I began to be a householder and had kids and a wife and all that. And I just couldn't leave in the middle of the day, 3:30, 4 o'clock wrestling practice. So I kind of drifted away, obviously, and left off. And as I got more involved in the fitness industry, I was really missing that outlet. That was a real part of my personality. Years, from the time of like almost 12 years, I guess. All my training was geared towards becoming a better wrestler, a better performance. I explored many possibilities. So I started looking at other martial arts, kung fu, karate. Tried some Muay Thai. I wasn't a particularly good striker, and I didn't even enjoy striking, to tell you the truth. Some lessons. And I just kept longing for grappling. I tried judo, I tried some Russian sambo, but once again, the practices were few and far between. A lot of times the practices would be really late at night, and I had to get up early for work. So it's a real tough thing. And then I discovered the Gracies in 1989. Videotape in a How to Do It video store. This video store specialized in tapes and how to do things. Everything from fixing a sink to birthing a baby to...
No shit. That's crazy. Now we have YouTube for all that.
Yeah. And the guy had a real niche market here with how to do videos. So I saw this Gracie in action. Gracie brothers beating the shit out of a bunch of guys. And I thought, wow, that looks like something I could do. I understand what it is they're doing. They're basically clenching and bringing the fight to the ground. And they're controlling guys. And they're using it looks really far out. I want to learn this. So 1989, they came to Hunter College, New York. I was there for that seminar. And I was just blown away. So, Horion, I learned this. Where do I go? And he says, well, Torrance, California is the only game in town. And that was correct at that time. And I started going, making pilgrimages. At that time, I had just opened up my own gym, Maxwell. as I would go out, I would stay for a week or two, and I would learn as much as I could. And then I would come back and up mats in my gym, and I would invite my old wrestling buddies, anybody that would be willing to come in, and I would set up these little practices, qualified to teach, but I would do the best I could. I mean, I major, I had a degree in health and PE. I coached wrestling, so I knew how to set up practices, run practices. I was good at organization. So I set up some pretty nifty practices and did the best I could with the skills I had at that time. And it grew. I had over 250 guys coming in.
Wow.
Points, yeah. It was huge. And I had to expand. So I opened up. I was like you. I had been given an old warehouse type building in Center City, Philadelphia that was unrentable. Pretty much on the guy offered me my first 6 months for free.
Yeah.
To open up my business. Yeah. Because he couldn't rent it. It was water damaged. It was all fucked up. There was no air conditioning, no heat. But, I installed all that stuff myself over time. Came up with a fair rent. And that was the start of the very first jiu-jitsu school on the eastern seaboard of the United States. We called it Maxwell. My name is Steve Maxwell. And people used to tell me after my classes, oh, man, I feel like I've been exercised. And I would say, no, not exercised. You've been maxercised. And just became like a little standing joke. School grew, and as my expertise grew, as I started making more and more rank, at that point, I ran one of the first, I think I had the first jiu-jitsu.
What year was that tournament?
It was like a little invitation. And
you still there?
Steve, you still there? Steve, can you hear us? You cut out. We can edit all this out too. Steve, can you hear us?
I was one of the old.
It's Steve. It's trying.
Hey, Steve, can you hear me? Steve?
Guard.
Hey, Steve, can you hear us? Steve, can you hear us? We lost you.
We can still talk about jiu-jitsu, you and me, Mike.
I know nothing about jiu-jitsu other than a bunch of dudes wrestling each other on the floor all hot and sweaty.
Well, actually, it's what he said, though, kind of does make sense. He is kind of a small, wiry guy like myself. And, when you see it, it's like, oh, this is how I can beat a bigger guy in a fight. Like, I've got a lot of fight in me, but you're able to use leverage and big muscle groups against small joints, or, like I said, a choke. A windpipe's not gonna hold up against an arm being wrapped around it. So it sort of made sense to me as being real practical in a way that I could also take my love of wrestling and continue it. Because after I got done with college, it was like, what do I do now? Like, there's that will to just not even compete, but just sort of continue to learn. And unfortunately, my schedule has had me drift away from it. So
oh, sure. Yeah, I did a boxing and Muay Thai after college for about 5 years until I had kids, and I got tired of getting. I felt like getting punched in the head all the time, several times a week, was starting to have an accumulative effect. And Jessica asked me to scale it back.
Yeah, I pulled away from Muay Thai because right now I'm rubbing my shin and I still have holes and divots in my shin. I was like, wait, I'm not fighting. Why am I just cracking my shin against somebody else's and limping for a day and a half each time? At what cost? I still do it for conditioning and to keep some technique up. I still do some bag work, but just the sake of just smacking my shin against somebody else's just for shits and giggles anymore. That was certainly a young 20s version of myself.
Oh, sure. Yeah, there really is like that numbing effect or deadening of the nerves after a while. I actually ended up with I don't know what degree burns, but after one practice, my shins were really, really sore, and I iced them, and I didn't even feel the ice or the cold, and it ended up burning the skin. Had like frostbite from leaving the ice pack on for too long, directly on the skin, but I couldn't feel the cold. I had no idea that the skin itself was actually freezing to the ice pack, all the skin ended up peeling away. Well, yeah, it was like it was only on there for like 20 minutes or so. It wasn't on there too long, but when I pulled it off, the skin was rock hard, and needless to say, like never did that again. But I think the feeling's back now after not doing it for so long. So Steve completely dropped off. Steve, are you there?
He's coming back.
Hello. Yeah. I'm on cellular. The Wi-Fi here at the hotel is completely cut out.
Oh.
I have no clue.
Okay.
I'm on T-Mobile cellular right now on my iPad. So can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah, we got you now. We actually just filled in where you left off. I was just sort of relating my jiu-jitsu experience, very similar to yours, kind of a small, wiry guy, and was like, this makes sense to me. Like, I'm not a big dude. I can't take on like real strong dudes in a straight wrestling match because they outweigh me. But it's like, oh wait, this makes sense. Use some leverage, and now I do have the advantage.
Exactly. And I was very impressed. I had a chance to train with Master Elliot Gracie himself. Had lessons. I even stayed at his farm with him for a month one time. It was really an amazing experience. And he always impressed upon me that jiu-jitsu type of martial art, it's defensive.
Yes.
It's the only martial art that I know of, or a weaker person to any other. You couldn't do it with any of the striking martial arts. A guy that's bigger, faster, stronger, can hit harder. It's very difficult to survive a realistic attack against a guy like.
That's interesting because in most like rape prevention courses, a lot of that is striking based, isn't it? They don't really teach.
It is.
Yeah, which seems like for most women would be useless, if that's because that's true.
Well, while we're on the subject, it'd be useless right up to the point once they hit the ground. I mean, maybe they could stun and run, a quick hit and make your escape, and that's what we teach in the GRD. But anyway, yeah. Once you're on the ground, you better know jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
Or you're pretty much in big trouble.
Oh yeah. It's and especially being able to stay composed. Every time I've done jiu-jitsu with people that are new to it or haven't done it or maybe come from just a wrestling background, they're just going and going and going, and I'm relaxed and calm, and they're like, how come you're not breathing hard? And I was like, well, you just relax, and I'll let you get tired because you're not advancing your position right now. You just kind of relax and wait them out in your guard, and then they make a mistake.
And that's one of the skills that we learn. Is we only use between 40 and maybe up to 60% of our total endurance. So
yeah,
that gives you a huge advantage. You're using a very small amount of your total power, and the whole idea is, of course, to allow make the other guy tired.
Now, how do you do that, Steve? Is that through breath? Is that through breathing training that you do that?
Breath work and positions of leverage. One, the frames, conditions. But once you understand the frame, you can use it for many, many, many positions.
Nice. So, Steve, you used to train Diego Sanchez. Sorry. Steve, can you hear us?
Makes a person just for no good reason.
that's frustrating too if you're the person using
I
your
did.
energy to get anywhere.
Steve, can you hear us? There's a little bit of a delay. Steve?
On?
Yeah, we can hear
Hello?
you now. You keep cutting out a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
he asked you about Diego Sanchez, I think is where we were
Yeah,
picking
no,
up at.
yeah, when I was in San Diego, I worked with him at the University of Jiu-Jitsu there in San Diego.
Did you work with him on his jiu-jitsu or mostly from a strength and conditioning standpoint?
From a strength conditioning point of view, he already had a great jiu-jitsu coach with Saulo Ibero.
Mm-hmm. And do you do any work with other fighters at the time, or have you recently done any work with any other UFC fighters?
I worked with Gunnar Nelson in
cool.
Iceland.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. But for the most part, with the modern MMA, it's pretty specialized type training.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I personally don't really get a lot of satisfaction out of working with guys like that. I just see the UFC type stuff as I kind of look at it as a negative light. Really, I think it's very damaging and really does injury to these guys over time. I think we're going to see a lot of fighter dementia, a lot of brain damage. I think the use of those gloves is pretty bad news.
Yeah, I was telling Mark, I used to do Muay Thai out of college for a few years, and I felt like getting hit in the head multiple times a week was starting to have an accumulative effect on me. And I wasn't even competitive. I just, went to a Muay Thai gym and sparred here and there. I can't imagine what the guys who do that for a living, who are doing it day in and day out constantly.
Well, it's going to end up like NFL football. I think as the statistics begin to mount, we're going to see some really serious problems with a lot of these guys that have been doing it for a number of years. Mark my words, it's going to be like some serious brain lesions. These guys are going to end up, pretty much like Smoking Joe Frazier and Muhammad Ali did, towards the end of their career. And it's a real shame. For that reason, I can't. I was very excited. I was on the ground floor of the UFC. I was Royce Gracie's conditioning coach for the first three UFCs, and in those days, of course, there was no gloves, which makes a big difference. People talk about bare knuckles being freaking brutal, but you can't really hit a guy that hard with bare knuckles.
No,
it's actually in many ways it's safer for your brain. But it really is. You get the surface cuts on the face and the skin, but it's way easier on the brain. You don't get that repetitive trauma to the head.
Now, is that
the
reason that they went to gloves? Is just because, from a marketing standpoint, having guys that visibly cut up would be maybe not as digestible by the public?
Well, in the beginning, sport, and everyone said, "Oh, it's too dangerous to use bare knuckles." The boxing commissions were at that time controlling mixed martial arts, but now mixed martial arts is not classified as a sport; it's classified as an entertainment, the same as WWF. In other words, it's the same type of classification as pro wrestling. So as an entertainment, it is not illegal to script fights. In other words, I believe that many of these fights are already predestined, that they already decide who's going to win, who's going to lose.
Mm-hmm.
You're like a MMA conspiracy.
Well, it's not illegal. It wouldn't be illegal. Look it up yourself. You can do the research. It's classified as a entertainment.
Well, and that wouldn't surprise me, given the corruption in other fighting sports and how selling all the other spike TV shows and all the magazines and interviews and making the storyline. Yeah, you would almost have to plan the storyline out 9 months in advance to make all that work.
Well, there's been some really questionable, endings. I mean, like the second fight between McGregor and Diaz. I mean, won that pretty clear, but yet, they won the rubber match. I mean, it's very good for MMA to have McGregor win. So I just find it very interesting. That's just one example of many, many, many fights that you see. It's like, what? Really? How could they say that guy won? These split decisions and so forth. It's crazy.
I scored at 1, 2, and 4 for McGregor. It was a tight fight though. That's the way I scored.
Very, very tight. So, but I mean, it certainly was in the best interest of the UFC money makers to have that go even Steven, right? For the rubber match.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm sure from a gambling perspective, I don't know, but that decision may have worked out in Vegas's favor. Yes, you always got to wonder if there's an element of that.
Well, McGregor was the favorite. It's like
zero
minus
proof.
135.
Yeah, me
I'm
neither.
making these assertions with no proof whatsoever. So,
Sure.
I'm basically talking out my ass. But as a guy that's studied martial arts all his life, I mean, some of these calls are so questionable. And the fact that it is classified as an entertainment, it would not be illegal for them to go ahead and, predetermine who wins, who loses, and so forth. And for guys to throw a fight, it would not be illegal whatsoever.
Well, and I know the
because
judging.
it is no longer
I know the judging
classified as a sport
for a while, and it's how do we get judges that actually know martial arts to be judges? That they're a lot of them are just sanctioned by a boxing commission. It's like, well, they're just people that like it's their opinion. The judges at the end of the night, and it's how much education do they have on martial arts or fighting or combat sports.
And most of them very, very little.
Exactly. You could go grab, some dude standing at a bus stop and be like, hey, you're going to judge a fight tonight, and it's about the same thing. And so that very cool. Very cool. I like anybody that has the balls to throw out a good conspiracy. It always entertains me, and I've certainly put on the tin hat myself before, Steve, for lots of things. So I appreciate where you're coming from and saying it. I got no problem with it. So let's go back to.
I just pretty much lost interest in the whole thing. Is just really bad for people's health and longevity, and it's there's no doubt these guys are amazing athletes. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that it's just I just don't particularly enjoy watching people destroy themselves like that.
Oh, I agree. And my dad and I are both really big fans, and I will say that this year, 2016, he and I both multiple times been like, we're just going to stop watching because it's become a circus act. So I 100% understand where you're coming from here. But, yeah, let's talk about that longevity thing. The idea of, like, destroying. So you said the UFC, right, we're going to start seeing a lot of the same consequences we saw in boxing and what have you. I don't disagree with that. I think that's kind of a consequence you have with any professional level sport. Like anytime you sort of just do one thing to try to get the highest level of it, there's the risk reward. It's maybe a big paycheck, but you sacrifice a lot of years. I mean, look at this, like the average NFL guy. I think they pass away in their mid-50s. That's just too young.
Yeah, well, I think that it's one thing if you go into it educated and you know what the possibilities are.
Right.
Let's say I go in as an NFL football player and I know what the ramifications are and the health risks. That's one thing. It's another thing for these guys to go in there and not know. So I think it's important that, people are educated and they go in with open eyes and they still decide to go ahead and go. Well, then, okay, that they did that willingly and they did that voluntarily with no false ideas about the consequences. But I think a lot of these young fellows went in there and didn't realize what was going on, had no idea of the consequences, and getting the beginnings of Alzheimer's, and it's like, wow, what a nasty trick. So, as long as people go in with open eyes and are completely aware and they're still willing to take the risk, that's on them. Like this idea that they are, basically trying to hide some of this stuff.
Right.
I think there should be some major studies done on this stuff, and I think the results should be published, and I think people should be made aware of the ramifications.
I think,
but a lot of young kids out there watching it, they never hear of the negative side or the downside of all this.
If I'm not mistaken, the NFL tried to sweep under the rug that movie Concussion that came out that was shedding light on the brain damage epidemic that was
I'm sure they did, man.
But they were unsuccessful in sweeping under the rug. So, there is light coming out of it. And I think that you're spot on in saying we're going to start to see some major consequences coming up, because a lot of these sports are still, relatively young as, in the grand picture of, how long we've been doing things. I mean, MMA is what, 20 years maybe? 20 years of sport?
Well, at least in modern times. I mean, of course.
Yeah, in modern times. You had pancration and all that stuff in the old days.
Yeah, right, the pancration, and of course in the Roman arena there was brutal. There has type martial arts. Maeda, the little Japanese guy that brought Kodokan style judo, which was basically jiu-jitsu, and taught the Gracies, he was supposedly the winner of over 800 no-hold-barred fights. So, it's been going on for some time.
That record's more impressive than mine.
Hey, Steve, so shifting gears a little bit, we know that you said you go around, you teach a lot of camps. I know that you got a Maui fitness camp coming up. What's going to be the focus of that camp?
Longevity in jiu-jitsu. A lot of the guys, by the time they get to their late 30s, early 40s, are already so busted up, they got to quit the thing they love the most. I mean, most grapplers, we're kind of like a brotherhood, and it is the thing that guys just love to do, but they find themselves beginning to break down physically. And before you know it, the shoulders, the elbows, the fingers, everything's hurting, it's aching. At this camp, I'm going to show you how you can prolong your career and enjoy it well into advanced age. A lot of and techniques for preventing muscular imbalances. Jiu-jitsu can really wreck your posture. A lot of guys, they sit all day in the office, which is already wrecking their posture. And then jiu-jitsu can exacerbate that if you don't take steps to correct it. So I show many, many balancing exercises and ways that you can fix your posture with simple techniques and exercises. And of course, we'll talk a little bit about diet. And we, of course, are going to go over the self-defense system. A lot of guys, even black belts, they're quite cool athletes. They know the basis of the jiu-jitsu self-defense. Standing up, and a lot of guys would not know what to do if a knife was suddenly pulled, blade was pressed up against the throat, or a gun held to their head. There are many, many defenses that Master Elliot Gracie modified from the original jiu-jitsu self-defense, and that's in the Gracie jiu-jitsu curriculum. You should defend yourself against stick, baseball bat, chain, all kinds of punches, kicks, grab, choke, body locks. There's always escapes from these positions. Fortunately, a lot of young fellas were never taught that. They were just too busy with the competition style. So we'll go over that quite a bit. I'll be co-hosting with Luis Heredia, who was Rickson Gracie's first black belt. Closest thing you'll get to Master Rickson without Rickson, Luis. So it's going to be a grand time. We'll talk a little bit about diet and so forth.
And
diet for longevity and for long-term performance. And I'll show all my joint mobility exercises, the Maxwell mobility and health system that will keep you spry and moving really, really good for years to come. So that's all going to be in April at Maui Jiu-Jitsu. I hope some of your listeners come.
And what do you have the specific dates for that yet? I'm sure we'll link it up in the. We'll link
My
it up
website.
afterwards.
Hey Teresa, when's that camp start? March 31st. There we go.
That's awesome.
March 31st.
Do you think, Steve, that you'll ever?
No April Fools.
Do you think, Steve, that you'll ever settle in and make a new home base anywhere? I know you've been on the road for quite a while, and has that ever crossed your mind?
One show, maybe slowing down and being in Maui, but just recently I've become really enamored with residential cruise ships. There are a number of these cruise lines realized that there was many people just going from cruise to cruise to cruise. So now there are several ships to purchase a cabin, like a condominium. You ship year round, and the ship just perpetually sails around the world. So that's my goal. I'm going to move onto a residential cruise ship and just continuously cruise around the world. My cabin, and when I get tired of it, you can go and you can stay somewhere for a month or two, and then you can fly and catch the ship at the next port, and that's my my plan. I think I'm going to settle up in the sun deck, ball class, or get some mats and do some geriatric jiu-jitsu on the sun deck up there of a residential cruise ship.
That's awesome.
Mike, work that into the business model.
Okay, yeah, I wouldn't mind myself.
Yeah, there you go.
They're gonna
with small kids, though, I don't think the wife would go for that for a few more years. But maybe as empty nesters, we can do that.
There you go, man. So keep those nests empty. That's what I tell all those young guys. Keep the nest empty as long as you can, man.
Oh man,
be an empty nester while you're in your 20s and your 30s.
Mike, do we have time for one more question?
Oh yeah, Steve. How long can you stick around with us? Okay. Well, we also.
I can stick around because.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead. Ask away, man.
So, what's you also mentioned you got a new
since we cut out.
Series. What's your video series about?
Yeah. It's vestibular reset, crawling. A way that it's a way that you can restore mobility and human movement once lost by replicating the movements of a young child, like an infant. As the baby develops, it has certain patterns that are very predictable. I love to watch young kids move. And by duplicating these movements, you basically reset your nervous system and your brain as mobile as a child. I've used this with many, many people that have trouble, let's say, getting up and down off the floor. Their posture is quite poor. And just by doing these simple movements, it has an amazing effect on the entire body. And it just basically rewires that brain. People with balance issues, getting up and down off the floor, maybe fear of falling, fit. I mean, you can make this as hard or easy as you want. I can make it easy enough, aged person, or I can make it an Olympic level athlete, basically based on human movement. And that's what the videotape is on. And just got it down to the real bang for the buck movements.
Mm-hmm.
Of observing human development, and I've had great success with all sorts of people. I had one guy with cerebral palsy that had horrible gait. Poor guy was all twisted. And these basic crawls and movements.
That's awesome. Hey, I know you've talked about archetypal postures.
So he had a lot, man. Yeah.
Well, is that the archetypal postures? Is that part of this training? Or maybe you could explain that for people who aren't familiar with archetypal postures.
Well, as children, we didn't sit in chairs.
Mm-hmm.
I look at chairs as very harmful. Some people have even referred to chairs as the new smoking. I don't know whether they're that harmful, but
went out.
Diaphragmatic breathing.
Uh-huh. You're
Yeah,
still here. You're cutting out a little bit, but
it cut out a little bit. Start from there.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So at any rate, there's way you have to sit, obviously. Sitting on the floor in these very basic postures. Every little kid, their toys, they'll take these various postures. The basic postures that human beings have sat in for time immemorial. Legs straight out, legged positions, kneeling on the feet, kneeling with the toes curled under. Some people call it the samurai sit, samurai position. Familiar with the shin box, or some people call it the Z seat or S seat. There's the hunter squat, the basic squat on toes. These are all positions that people have used forever and ever. I can remember reading and watching TV while lying on my stomach. Very, very good for restoring posture. Posture, television, while just laying on my stomach, or reading elbows in my mouth under the covers, so I wouldn't get caught up on my sleep, and I'd be reading a book. And between young and old is your comfort on the floor. Most adults are very uncomfortable. They can't sit a few seconds before they get comfortable. And they, their joints hurt, they ache, and they're stiff, and they need to be propped up on these chairs. But with children, no. So the idea is go back the way you did when you were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right before the pre-chair era, and start duplicating all those positions that you did as a young kid. And it's also interesting to note that cultures still adopt these positions. They will kneel and sit and squat in these various patterns. I call it the archetypal postures. There's
yeah,
10 of them.
That's awesome. That's definitely right up my alley. The crawling and sitting on the floor and being like a kid again. That's such a great approach, and I think that is entirely successful for countering this sort of modern civilization that we live in. So I certainly appreciate that. There's a reason why I've been following you for years, Steve. But that's awesome. That's awesome that you got that project going. Mike, did you have a question? Because I actually had a question for him. Unless you had one right quick.
No, go ahead.
Yeah. So you've mentioned this nomadic lifestyle, and it's really fascinating to me. I've kind of never really had the balls to just like pick up and go. I think a lot of people admire that in you. But what would you say is the most rewarding aspect of a nomadic lifestyle?
Just not being encumbered with and just being weighed down by your stuff. I was always had this kind of nomadic. For many before I became a householder, if I couldn't put everything in my car in about, then I figured I had too much stuff. I lived that way for years. I became a householder and started accumulating stuff, and I had a gym. That all changed. But then after my divorce, I pretty much went back to that ideal. And for me, I just love the freedom of it. I don't have or insurance payments on property or building, taxes, school taxes, and it's not just the money. It's just the fact that costs with all that stuff in the first place. Pick up and just go wherever the hell. I can pretty much buy whatever I want to online. And I'm just not encumbered with anything. I can just go where I want on the internet. And I just realized stuff you really need. one pair of pants and only sit in one chair, cup. Why do people think they just need a whole household and closets full of clothes they don't even wear? Not having those things is a real sense of freedom. I have all this stuff weighing me down. I can just pretty much just go where I want, whenever I want.
Gonna be like completely untethered. That's cool.
Yeah, and there's that chasing that. Mark and I have talked about this on other podcasts, Steve. Is just that a lot of people chase that lifestyle and it destroys their life, either because it never satisfies, or they accumulate a ton of debt trying to maintain that American dream lifestyle. And I feel like for me, I try to be a minimalist, even though I have a house and 2 kids. That there's freedom in owning less, even if you are domesticated.
The lifestyle isn't for everyone. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, the lifestyle isn't for everyone, obviously. True. And you can still enjoy a more minimal lifestyle without having to go on the road full time like I do.
Sure.
I mean, it's just a matter of perspective, and just a person can certainly weed out of their lives the junk that they're not using, mm-hmm. and they can also stop striving to get more and more stuff. And that's pretty much what people do. They just strive to get more and more and more stuff, and obviously it's not very fulfilling, or they wouldn't keep trying to get more and more stuff. It's just like a vicious cycle. And they spend their whole lives working, sometimes at jobs they don't even like, to get all the stuff that they don't really need, which isn't fulfilling, that doesn't make them feel happy, because it's just right on to the next thing. And lifetime that way, when they should be out there living it. No, you don't need to be an extremist like me. I am a bit extreme, I suppose, although right now I'm in a very beautiful hotel room. Nice bed to sleep in. iPad and my iPhone, I can connect to the internet. So, I can make money through the internet. And, like I say, I don't need to dress up, so I don't jackets or suits or ties. Use a couple nice pair of pants, go work out and training. I borrow a gi. Wherever I go. Really need. I don't want to go any place where I have to wear a tuxedo or I don't want to go in a place like that.
Yeah.
I live a very stuff like it. I was very, childhood for a lot of people is very free, very happy. I've tried to go back to those feeling of happiness I had when I was just a little kid growing up in Carlisle, Pennsylvania.
Oh, shoot. My son, his favorite thing in the world is a straw. We have all these expensive toys. He never plays with them, but if we go anywhere, just get the kid a straw, and he'll be the happiest person in the world. It just goes to show you, you don't need much to be happy.
With my son, when he was little, it was the same cardboard box, a hollow tube, or a stick or something. Mm-hmm. My God, the imagination is unbelievable. He could play for hours just messing around with stuff like that.
Well, Mark, do you have anything else you want to ask Steve about?
Not at the moment. I hope we do get to have you on again, because I feel like we have many more hours of conversation to have.
Absolutely.
It's an absolute pleasure, Steve, and such an honor to talk to a guy of your experience and just knowledge and just sharing your time with us. I've certainly got a lot out of it. I know our listeners will, and it's just cool, man. It's cool to have somebody that's been sort of, in my opinion, light years ahead of where the game's trying to go, even though the game is struggling to get there. I think ultimately we will all end up in this longevity mindset as trainers and coaches. I see more and more people becoming like-minded You're like myself and you, where hey, the goal is what can you do in your 70s and 80s, not how hard can we go today.
Well, that it's funny you said that, because one of my mentors used to say this to me all the time. He would say, anybody can be something in their 20s or 30s, and most guys can still maintain it pretty good through their 40s. He says, I want to be something when I'm 70 and 80. Hardly anyone in their 70s, 80s, or 90s that are still really spry and able to do stuff. He said, that's what I want to do. So that really influenced me a lot, and I agree.
Steve, are you familiar with Don Wildman, the founder of Bally Total Fitness? Are you familiar with Don Wildman, the founder of Bally Total Fitness?
I'm not. No, I don't know.
He's in his 80s, and the dude could still pull, hammer out 20 or 30 pull-ups.
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, but he's proof, if you do it and you stick with it, it is possible, but you have to train the right way.
You do. All right, gents. It was a pleasure. Thanks for having me on your show, and I look forward to talking to you again sometime.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. We'll connect offline about offering up your new video as for a contest, and then seeing if we can't do some other stuff together.
Excellent. Yeah, just contact Teresa through the website.
All right, thanks.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Have a good day.
Thanks, Steve. Have a great one.
All right, bye-bye. Hey, everybody. So thanks again for checking out this episode of the Awaken Alive podcast. We hope you enjoyed everything Steve had to say. We apologize. At some points, there was a little bit of audio issue. Steve was joining us from London, UK, taking some time out from his busy schedule to talk to us. Just as a reminder, please check out IamAwakeandAlive.com. Subscribe to the podcast in iTunes. You can also subscribe to our newsletter on the website to get updates on other upcoming shows and products that we have. Also on our website, we have an online training portal. If you're interested in learning how to train with kettlebells, sandbags, body weight exercises, learn how to use dumbbells unconventionally, consider signing up for our online training portal. Through the training portal, you get access to over a dozen conventional and unconventional workout programs. You also get access to 150 exercise tutorials, like I mentioned, showing you how to properly use kettlebells, dumbbells, training with your body weight. You also get access to our ebook downloads, our growing library of other featured trainers who will also be adding videos to the site. And the site features Mega Mad Fitness, so there's also plenty of follow-along workout videos. If you want to work out at home or just follow somebody on your device at the gym, you can do that by becoming a member. The membership is only $9.99 for a 30-day trial monthly, and then $14.99 after that. Or you can become a lifetime member, which is a really great deal. For only $149, you get access to everything that is in the member portal now and into the future. Forever. We really want to encourage people to get in the best shape of their life and learn how to train for a lifetime. So, if you need a new way to train, if you need a new program, you want to learn the art of unconventional fitness and how to change the direction of your training, check it out. We think it's, we've just really put together a great group of trainers and material there for you. Again, just thanks for checking out the show, and we hope you guys will tune in next time. Thanks.